So the video that I released last week talking about the bigger knock-on effect that we've seen from Cwicly effectively closing their doors to new development, I wanted to go back to one key thing that I think really has become much bigger over the last couple of days since releasing that video, since taking a look at some of the other people's videos that have been put out there on exactly the same kind of topic and their feelings on how they perceive the whole WordPress small developer ecosystem and the effects that Cwicly's kind of shutting down has had on those. I want to kind of just go back and talk about that a little bit and why, if we take that approach, we're effectively shooting ourselves in the foot and having a much bigger, a much broader effect on WordPress as a whole. So let me briefly just back up a second and say what I'm talking about. There's a fear based upon Cwicly closing their doors so quickly, pardon the pun, that supporting one-man developers, small development teams and so on is much riskier. And while there's some validity in that, I think we need to look at the bigger picture. And if we don't support them, what we will actually lose out long term. So let's start off with a couple of examples of products that started as very small, maybe one-man band products, but now we take for granted. Let's take a look at something like advanced custom fields. That started off as one person, and that was one person for a very long time. Sure, there were negatives because updates weren't necessarily rolled out as quick as we would have liked, but the reality is without that being developed in the first place, we wouldn't have such a rich ecosystem around WordPress and advanced custom fields. Plus the fact that when that was sold to a bigger corporation, a bigger company, and let's forget the interim one, let's take a look at where it is now, that's pushed forward. We're getting regular updates, we're being kept in the loop with what's going on. We've had it open up now to be able to work with taxonomies, custom post types and so on, so we don't need another plugin to handle it. One man started that, and then that's grown into something that there are tens, if not hundreds of thousands of users using the free and the premium version. Let's take a look at something like Bricks. That started off as an individual person with an idea, Thomas. Now he may have brought other people on board relatively early, but they're still a relatively small team. Would we be seeing companies like Elementor pushing forward with things like the container, CSS grid, and various other things that they brought to the table very, very late in comparison to some of the other tools? But would we be seeing those being pushed forward to be kind of forced into releasing these if we didn't have those smaller disruptive companies, things like Bricks, things like Breakdance, things like Oxygen? These are all started off relatively small and they've shaped the overall community and the overall WordPress ecosystem. Why? Because people like you and people like me invested time, effort and money into those products, supporting those individual, those small teams to help disrupt the bigger market. Advanced Thema. It's an amazing product that opens up a ton of time-saving possibilities and quality of life improvements to Bricks Builder. Would we have that? Would Maxime be doing that if we didn't have individual developers excited to create great new products? Bear that in mind when you're kind of thinking, do I really want to support this? It's one person, it's a bit of a risk. Well, we don't give them the opportunity, they'll never be able to grow and become something much bigger. Let's go back to Bricks, for example. That started off very small, and version 1.0 of that was very different to what you see now. But because it was a relatively unknown with a small team, agility was something that was incredibly easy to take on board. So the feedback about the way things would actually operate, how you created pages, was very quickly changed over to closer to what we're seeing now with sections, containers, and so on. So without that flexibility, that ability to be able to pivot at any given notice, we wouldn't have other companies being pushed forward. And this is something we do have to bear in mind, that agility is a benefit for us as well as the developer. Now take a look at something like WooCommerce. We don't really have any other tools out there that can compete with it. Yes, you've got North Commerce and you've got SureCart and you've got smaller tools, but let's be brutally honest about it. SureCart is more to do with digital products, and North Commerce, not that many people are actually supporting and using it, unfortunately, because we do need competition. But again, these all start off with individuals. Sure, some of them are going to fall by the wayside, some of them are not going to be as good a product as we want or as we need, but if we don't help people innovate and push forward and support them, we're never going to get competition to tools like WooCommerce. So they're going to keep that monopoly, and therefore we're going to have this not the best sort of product, and we're going to end up pushing people outside of the WordPress ecosystem. I know for myself, if I was doing anything with more than a dozen products, maybe 20 products, I would never recommend using WooCommerce. I just don't think it's that nice a platform to work with. So bear that in mind. So the overarching thing that I want to say here is, if you're falling into the camp of being fearful of supporting those solopreneurs, those one-man bands, those smaller development teams, just remember there's probably a lot of products that you have in your tech stack that started off as an individual or a small team, and without our support at that early initial stages, they would never be what they are today. Just bear that in mind. Now, as always, I would love to get your feedback on what you think of what I'm saying. Give me your opinions, give me your thoughts, give me your feelings. And if you want to learn more about Cwicly and the previous video I'm talking about, you can see that here right now. Check that out.